middle of the presentation, right? You want to start the beginning. All right. Officially, good morning. My name is Deborah Gallant. Today's Forever Forward is assembling your outsourced dream team. I'm not going to read my own bio here. I am the Senior Program Manager and Manager of Program Innovation for Entrepreneurs Forever. And I also facilitate a couple of our groups. Here's my disclaimer. This presentation does not take the place of professional advice from your own paid advisors, but I hope you still get some good tips from it. So we did do some of this who you are at the beginning. So I'm actually going to fast forward through it. And in case you're not aware, but I think most of you are, Entrepreneurs Forever's mission is to equalize opportunity by connecting often overlooked small business owners with the peers, skills, and support they need to succeed. So why are we talking about this topic? Well, many of our members and other small businesses are solo entrepreneurs. In business and economic speak, it's called a non-employer firm. It means it's basically just you. You don't have other employees. But frequently, you get yourself in a place where you go, wow, I really need some help on something. And I make the point in this slide is that those might be different than your personal advisor. So you might have an accountant who does your and your spouse's taxes. That might not be the same accountant you want to help you with your business. I just want you to keep in mind, because sometimes the interests of your business and your own personal things are diverging. So I am going to stop sharing for just a moment while I attach the handout to send all of you. Hold on, I need to bring the chat back up. There we go. Hold on, sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty for one moment because I need to have the chat to send you all. There we go, the attachment. 1 second, sorry. Thanks for putting up with me and my technology challenges. There we go. All right. So now you should have in your inbox or in your attachment there, your handout. All righty, back to Zoom. All right, back to share screen. View. All right. So I put this note in here, actually just added it last night because I think it's really important before we get into talking about outsourcing, that you can't just take something that's in your to-do pile and say, oh, this is yours. You figure it out. I remember early on in my coaching and consulting career, I met a guy who was a mediator, and he said, "Oh, why don't you do sales for me?" And he's like, I'm like, what does that even mean? He's like, I don't like selling myself. And I'm like, if people are going to hire you as a mediator, they need to buy it from you. They don't need to buy it from me. And he had this vision that he could check off a box and never think about sales again. It doesn't happen that way when you're a solo entrepreneur. You still need to be in charge of the work that's being done by your organization. Your webmaster can't build the website without providing content. And by the way, I've talked to a million webmasters who people have this vision that you're going to just be able to mind meld with them and figure out what you want to say about your business. It doesn't work that way. You can't just call your lawyer and say, write a contract until you tell them what needs to go in it. So there's no magic bullet, people. I'm sorry. I wish I was delivering a magic bullet. If I did, I would have more than 27 people on the call. But here's the thing. You can make your life easier. You can take some of the things off of your own plate by hiring. And that's what today is all about. All right. So the first thing is legal advice and oversight. You probably need an attorney. Now, I've created this whole section here, can I cheap out? Because believe me, I have sat where you have sat and go, I don't want to pay a lawyer. I'm going to just go to findlegalforms.com. Yeah, well, sometimes you can get away with that. You can use, I've actually heard horror stories about Legal Shield and Legal Zoom and all of these other ones. And by the way, if any of you want to share information, remember it is being recorded so other people will hear it, but you absolutely can share any information you have about this stuff. But filing your legal entity status and paperwork, if you're doing anything pretty much more than a DBA, you probably do need a lawyer. You want to make sure that your all your legal documents are in order and filed in the right places, and that if you're doing, you need an official place to have all your forms sent. You need all of that done. Contracts can be really important, especially if you're providing services as what you do. You probably want to make sure that your clients are agreeing to what it is you plan to provide. And we'll talk about being on the other side of that. And if you ever have an employee and there's a sticky issue, it's a time when you really do want an attorney. So you don't have to have one on retainer, but it would be really helpful to have an attorney who specializes in small businesses, understands what it is that you do. And when you pick the phone up, you're not trying to explain everything from the beginning. It may cost you something to bring that person in, but almost all attorneys would have a first meeting for free, and then you could use them as you need. One of the ways I used attorneys when I've been running my own business is I'll do one of those things where I'll go, I think it's called legalforms.com. And what I would do is I would take their basic contract, I would amend it the way I thought it needed to be amended, and then I'd send it to the lawyer. So I was paying for an hour of the lawyer rather than the lawyer, which I'm not a lawyer, and don't sue me. I bet the lawyers are using templates and boilerplate. They're just going and finding it somewhere else. So why can't I save that step of finding the standard language and then doing it? That's how I've used it. I don't know if anyone else has done some combination of it, but Mike, what have you done for a lawyer?
Yeah, unmute. I mean, I lived in DC, so I had lots of friends who are lawyers. But the flip side is clients will send me a contract, and so they've got their standard basic contract that, particularly for solopreneurs, if it's entrepreneurs, if it's a big firm, the company is a big, the client is a big company, they've got these crazy ass provisions in it that don't apply and may be problematic. So being able to talk to a lawyer about how to amend it and to delete that stuff.
Yeah, it's actually really helpful if you have a lawyer who's a friend, even if they specialize in something else, to put their eyes on something before you sign it is a terrific thing. But if I'm not going to assume that that's the case for most of us, but before you sign something that feels in any way like it's committing you to something, it's fantastic to have a lawyer in your back pocket.
Well, and the thing about contract law is sort of very basic for lawyers. It's not like you need somebody, presuming you're not in some very specialized field. General contract laws, most lawyers have a pretty good understanding of it.
And
that's again my non-lawyer legal advice.
Yeah, and remember this, we have a big disclaimer at the beginning of this. I'm in favor of having an attorney before you need an attorney, because if you are desperate, there's a problem, someone's suing you, there's a breach of contract issue, whatever, you'd like somebody who already knows who you are and what your business is. So it's a nice thing to have. I would say in most cases, you should have it. Anyone else want to chime in on the question about attorneys?
Yeah.
Hi, James.
Hi, everyone. I'm on your side, Deborah. I think that, and this is coming from an accountant, don't get me wrong. But lawyers and accountants are people you need to have on your team from the very beginning. And as I was telling someone earlier this week, it's not necessary to have them on retainer, but at least get to know them and, set something up where you say, hey, can I call you? And, bill me for the time it takes to go through the issue we're on. But I need to have someone I can have a relationship with to contact in case I have this issue. And at least you know them and don't need to get to know them at, when the issue is alive, as you're saying.
When it's a crisis, it's going to really weigh on you. And it's nice that they already know you. That's a great point. All right. Anyone else on lawyers? We're going to move on to the next category, which James will love. financial reporting and taxes. James, actually, why don't you, since you're here, why don't you unmute and tell us why you might need an accountant and a bookkeeper or both?
I mean, anybody can be a bookkeeper. For me, I try to train my clients to be their own bookkeeper so that they have that understanding of their business. An accountant requires more of a higher level of understanding of the financial reporting and everything that a bookkeeper does, so that they can at least advise a client in the direction that they want to go. Again, anyone can be a bookkeeper. The more financial needs a business has, the more technical the skill set should be. Some people go straight to a CPA, which is kind of overboard in a lot of situations, but any successful business is going to build to that need anyway. So there is a definite difference. And you may need one or both depending on your business level.
Thank you, James. Did you want to say something, Mike?
How do I remember to unmute? That's my question. I just went and got a new accountant because I had one in Maryland for a long time. And I went and I interviewed 3 different accounting firms that were recommended. And can you, James or Deborah, talk about how to interview? And I've seen this applies to lawyers and financial management and maybe all these other categories. How to do enough due diligence to find somebody that's going to be a good fit without wasting your time and, interviewing every lawyer in the metropolitan Minneapolis area, wherever you live?
Actually, it's a great question. And I have a whole slide that I
Never
tried to.
mind.
No, I do at the end. How do you pick these people? But I think
Okay.
you're raising some fantastic questions about it. And I love that James is here because he can help. And maybe some of the other folks on the call can also help us think about that. But basically, your bookkeeper or yourself, whoever it is, needs to keep records of what's going on in your business, what you spent money on, who you paid, who you invoiced, what you got in. It's the basic stuff. I know about myself that I don't like doing it. I moved across the country from California to the East Coast. Don't you know, I sent an envelope every month to my bookkeeper. Now, granted, this was 10 years ago and I couldn't do everything in the cloud like you can do now, but I knew I wasn't going to keep those records. And so she did that for me. A lot of people use QuickBooks, or there are some alternatives to do that everyday stuff. But you don't know if your business is making money if you don't keep financial records. Just saying, yeah, my bank account looks high, so I must be doing okay, is not a good answer in terms of really wanting to grow your business. Olivia, you're a financial coach, aren't you? Can you tell us why you tell people to keep account of their businesses?
Oh, I mean, exactly what James said of understanding all those layers of your business, because if someone else is doing it for you, then it's like you have to go to them to get that information as opposed to having it in you.
And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, which is it's your business. Even if your bookkeeper sends you a report, if you don't open it and look at it and go, how is this looking? What was the point of doing it? You have to know whether this is a profitable business or an expensive hobby. Yes, there's some of it you can do. And if you're a good record keeper, you can keep your own books. I would recommend making sure you do use an accountant for taxes. And I bet James has a point of view on that. But you can file your own taxes if they're really simple. I just want you to know that you have advice on this. And again, there are people who will help you set up your QuickBooks and then leave you on your own, check in with you once a year. There's lots of ways to think about it, but I do not recommend cheaping out on this because it's just too important. Amy?
Hi, good morning. This is a very timely topic for me. I'm actually interviewing a new bookkeeper today at 5 o'clock. And I'm wondering, and it sounds like we've got some experts already here, and Deborah, with your background, and you may have just said this, but I've heard different things where I'm going to want help for me. I'm going to want the right bookkeeper that I'm like accountable to. I do use QuickBooks Online. I know enough to be dangerous in my own system, but I'm really bad at holding myself accountable because I avoid this one area of my business a lot. So that's the direction I think I want to go in, is like hiring a bookkeeper that I can be accountable to. We both get into QuickBooks Online. And is that a different person altogether, correct, than the person I'm, preparing the information I need to do my taxes, you know, in annual and quarterly. They should be two separate people, correct?
James, up to you, baby.
It's not necessary. I like the idea of getting some, making sure your bookkeeper, having your bookkeepers making you accountable. That is awesome. That is something you really want to look into. The other thing is, I work with a tax preparer, and I'm a bookkeeper / accountant.
Okay.
I work with a tax preparer, and what I do is I keep the books in our hierarchy, as it were, and I keep the communication with my client. The tax preparer is somebody we consult on a monthly to quarterly basis, so that understanding what the client wants to do in the direction of their business, the bookkeeping and the tax piece should be working with the client to pursue those goals. So it doesn't have to be the same person, but it can be. It's totally up to you and how you want to operate.
Olivia, you want to weigh in? Nope. Here's what I'll say about it in my experience is that I want to make sure my bookkeeper, my accountant, and I all are in communication and we all understand what's expected of each of us and where it fits, so that when my accountant does my year-end taxes, that the bookkeeper has prepared everything the way the accountant wants to look at it, so it makes sense. And also, there are people who are going to want more involvement with their bookkeeper and their accountant, and there are people who want less. So understanding from the beginning what everyone thinks their roles are makes a lot of sense. So I'd convene if you're going to use two different resources, a three-way conversation, and they can talk their special code language. As long as they understand each other and you can figure out, it's all good.
Okay, one last quick question, and maybe I can do a follow-up, James, if you're willing. Maybe we can connect at some point soon. So two areas, especially now that most of these professionals are meeting virtually, so it doesn't appear that like the geographic factor is as much of a concern as it was. Like, you don't have to drive to their office necessarily. So how much would you factor in the geographic location of either the bookkeeper or the accountant? And also, how much do you think they need to know your industry?
Those are great questions, Amy.
Thank you.
Number one, you want to assess their background to know that they have either worked in or have a full understanding of your industry. Absolutely. I would not take on a manufacturing client. Wouldn't happen for me. Construction, medical, certain, other services, absolutely. But I have no experience because I've worked in many industries. I have no experience in manufacturing. Somebody else. As far
and
as
he probably knows somebody to refer you to. So if you find someone who doesn't, ask them for a referral to somebody they trust.
Yeah, that's a great statement, Deborah. The other thing you wanted, as far as the geographic location, there's great software out there that can mitigate that. I'm personally not a great fan of it, only because I really like that eye contact with my client. I am onboarding a client in Texas right now, but only because they are a relative of a close friend of mine. And it's something because I'm trying to create a better service than what they're getting. Is it impossible to do? Nope. And if you're comfortable with that person not being there and possibly never shaking hands with your accountant, and if something happens, you don't have the logistical ability to reach out, go to their office or something like that, it can create some hurdles. So if you're doing something like that, I would absolutely recommend making sure that all of your records are on hand. And what I mean by, if they have any reports that they send to you, if you have a payroll especially, you want to make sure you get access or have all of your reports and paperwork, at least electronically, locally, so that in case anything happens, because we all can walk in front of a bus, but if that bus is in a different city, you got bigger problems because you don't know what may be happening with that individual, on a local basis. Again, I think it's definitely possible. I just think you want to make sure you have other things,
Yeah.
yourself in place that you can minimize anything that could go wrong.
You know, James, I've got to hand it to you. I've heard that if you get hit by a bus so many times, but I've never heard somebody say in another city creates a whole new set of, so I got to, that's a whole new analogy. Thank you for that. And, you know, what comes up for me is, you know, I feel like I kind of, in my heart, I would really prefer to have somebody here in central Massachusetts. Like, that's like really what speaks to me, because it's like, they're my local people. Ideally, you know, I think the industry piece is extremely important, but I was trying to downplay it. And then I was also trying to downplay like the, you know, where are they? Because virtual people can do it from wherever. But I think not, I mean, there are distinct state and local rules, I mean, especially state by state. I think that is different. And I've been working with somebody who's very kind, who's up in New Hampshire, and she just seems like she's a little out of the loop with what I feel like she needs to know for Massachusetts. But anyways, thank you so much. And sorry to take the time, Deborah, but I appreciate the questions.
I just want to make sure we get to, and we can come back and do more in the Q&A. So let's talk about marketing for just a minute. There are a lot of different categories about marketing: a strategist, a designer, a writer, a webmaster, social media. I mean, when you first started your business, hopefully you got somebody to do a logo and create a basic website. Business cards, I actually think they're still really important, especially if you're doing business in person and going local. Marketing collateral, understanding how you're reaching your target customers and the help that you need to do that is really important. This is back to owning your own business. Can you cheap out and do it yourself? Outbound marketing. You know, James is an accountant and a book. Maybe he doesn't have to do a lot of outbound marketing. So having a market strategist to do his social media, it might not be important. On the other hand, Olivia and I started following each other recently on social media, and with her coaching and consulting and her approach to what she does, she needs to be visible across a wide swath. So I imagine marketing is really important to her. So understanding yourself. I'm not a fan of your own logo or using Fiverr to do it. I wonder if have other people tried to do that sort of cheaper, do it yourself attitude, and how did that work for you? I'd love to hear. Anyone?
I had a friend who's a graphic designer do my logo. I gave her the basics, what I thought I wanted, and she did it nice. I also wonder, I mean, the other thing, Deborah, we haven't talked about this, but, you know, depending on your industry, depending on your business, your industry, the importance of logo and branding versus your own name recognition kind of thing.
You know, this is going to depend on everybody's specific business. I actually, in the early days of the internet, I've been doing this since 1995, when the rest of you, some of them you weren't even born yet. But in the early days, I did a webinar, why you shouldn't let your brother-in-law build your website. That was literally the name of the webinar, because people had this idea that it was going to be one and done. And, you know, my brother-in-law does something tech and he'll do it. You want to have someone who's accountable to you, who thinks about your business, who's not just like, yeah, I could build your WordPress website, because then you'll never be able to change it. I think there's a real value in having somebody who reports to you, who is good at this, who has experience doing it. Kirsten, I saw you unmute, and I know that what you do online is really important. How much of your stuff do you do yourself?
Like, I'll talk about marketing. I mean, I feel like I did get burned. I'm an artist and I sell products, so if that's helpful.
And Kirsten is going to be in our e-commerce social media
next month.
coming
Yeah.
up. I'm really excited. Okay, so tell us about you and marketing.
Well, so I'm thinking a lot more about it. I had a really rough past year, and so I need to kind of make up some money here. And I feel like when I hired someone, it was like several months, maybe a 6-month period, and it was very expensive. Like, marketing is expensive. And I will say from that, I got like this beautiful brand package, like, you know, color and, you know, the logo, and it was things like, honestly, I, as an artist, could have done myself, but I feel like, again, you're like accountable, you're working with someone. My issue with marketing is it okay to like ask how long for the return? Because other than those like deliverables where now I have these things, like as far as someone who's just out there working on your behalf, and I'm not discrediting it, like I would love this relationship to work with someone, but I've been wondering, like, it's a lot more expensive than what I pay myself. And then you're like, okay, like, do you see this, like, will I see a return in 3 months, 6 months? Like, I would love like some kind
So,
of
was this
guarantee.
like
And
a social media marketer who promised you something?
yeah, it was kind of like I didn't see it. I think I did, another friend worked with the same person and she started seeing a return, but it was, I mean, it seemed like a long time. A long time investment. And I don't know that that's everybody, but that was my experience. So I would love to kind of know, and in interviewing, this has been really helpful. I think because you don't know what you don't know. I work with one person and I'm like, this is my experience. And, I'm dealing with every single one of these categories so far. I have to find a new accountant and all these things because I've only had that one, and I've been in business for 10 years now, but I still haven't, like, I'm a slow learner.
But you're
So
still
that's
here,
what I'll say.
you're
Yeah.
here learning, which is all
I'm
good.
trucking along. But yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of
Amy,
more
did you
thoughts
want
on that.
to contribute?
Yes, and I'm not seeing your name at the bottom of my screen for some reason, guys. I am on my phone because I had a little meltdown. What's your first name again? Who just
Kirsten?
spoke?
I'm Kirsten. Yeah.
Kirsten, nice to meet you, Kirsten. So
Nice to meet you.
thanks, I'm Amy. So I would have to say, when I finally realized, oh my gosh, if I don't link revenue generating KPIs to social media activity, it's never going to have a positive, like an obvious positive impact. Maybe, one thing to say is,
Tell us your business first, Amy.
sure, I provide internship services, in short. So one thing is, like, so I have 3 part-time virtual assistants that work with me. So one of the people is a social media person, and she's lovely. She's actually international. We've been working together almost 2.5 years. And we've grown a lot together, but I recently realized, oh my gosh, why I'm frustrated with this current situation is that, I really haven't directed her well to say, let's measure these things as it pertains to social media this quarter, at least this 6 months or 12 months, like, absolute, because it can go on. Like, we've been working together over 2 years, and have I ever gotten a direct client directly from my social media and her efforts? I have never once. The only thing that's converted is my network, my communication, my speaking, my networking, my FU follow up. I always say to my young people, the secret to success is FU follow up. Wah, wah. But that's something that I just realized recently. I'm like, you know what? Yes, we work well together, but that's not enough. Like, I need to direct her to specific key performance indicators that what do I want my social media to achieve and by when? And then we need to be able to measure how that's working and tweak when it's not working as well, as opposed to me just getting upset. And then because I love her, I don't want to I don't want to create upset. I always lead from my heart. That's like the kind of leader I am. And so,
Amy,
but I realized this very
Just
recently.
get more specific. It sounds
Amy,
like super
Amy,
specific.
give us an idea of a KPI that your social media person was willing to agree to.
Yeah, that's great. So you guys, and this is in the context of in marketing world. I used to market the product, the service, whatever the thing was, I would market the thing. But I've learned, market the thing that sells the thing. So this is massive. And social media can do a lot to, for example, if the thing that converts is me having a 30-minute Zoom exploration call with someone, whether it's a young person or an organizational client, right? Then if my social media can achieve X number of scheduled meetings with Amy over this week or this month, that's a very specific way that you can measure, like, a revenue generating activity and link it to social media activity that you're paying for. Calls with Amy. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but, like, what is the thing? Are you driving people to a particular, like a free webinar or a freebie? How many times?
Kirsten sells stuff. So does she want visitors to her website? Does she want shopping carts opened? Does she want inquiries for custom work? What is it that she's looking for?
That's exactly it. So that list for you, Kirsten, so pick, what is the thing that you can look back at this month and say, boom, we made
This
progress.
would be the easiest return kind of thing to start there. Yeah.
So what is that thing? Just not to go on and on, but what is one
I would
thing
say
for
I
your
would say product, like, just more online sales. That's simple,
Yeah,
things that
right.
are sitting there in the warehouse. Yeah.
And what's the metric for the sale before it becomes a sale?
It's probably a visitor to the website,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
sure.
Right? Or a particular product? Are you doing a promo? Like who's clicking on that? Like, okay, so
I don't know, no promos. It would just be like the fact that, yeah, there's some traffic to the site and they purchase. And I will just say, this might be a little off topic, but Etsy just started. I really love some of their information on the back end, but they were, they showed me how much money is left in carts. Like, I know that's available on the back
Yes.
end of websites. And they were like, oh, like you could reach out with this
Yes.
promo and say, and
Exactly.
to me, yeah, that's a very good tactic if I had something written that
Yeah.
felt like authentic and not like salesy.
And
But
once we get over the, like, they can see the back of my shopping cart, like, that's a little
Yeah.
intrusive. But
Yeah,
once we
yeah.
get over that and we realize that's the state of the world today, it's like, then we can be very kindly and we can follow up with key people that have already initiated the
And
cart.
honestly, e-commerce sites are so aggressive about that.
Right?
I'm
Totally.
used
Did
to
you
it.
mean to buy that travel pillow, Deborah? It's like
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, we
So I
have
hope that
so
helps.
much more to cover, but you guys, you're making my heart sing the way you're helping each other. Thank
Yeah,
you so
I
much.
think we'll connect. Nice to meet you, Amy. Thank you.
All right. So technology, IT support, a webmaster. This depends on how technology oriented you are. But I will tell you, this cybersecurity deep dive we ran recently made me realize how very at risk almost all of our systems are. And it may make sense the same way that you have an accountant and attorney to have a technology person on call. You do not want to get hacked. You want to make sure you're doing data backup. You want to make sure all the people who work with you are using all of their data protections. I mean, Amy's using 3 virtual assistants. If one of them lets someone into her credit card account or into something where she doesn't mean for them to be, and they're working out of Pakistan, it's like, oh my God, the risks are ridiculous. So having someone help you set that up. And by the way, one of the things the guy said on the cybersecurity one that I thought was really interesting is, if you think the technology insurance you have, whatever your umbrella policy that includes cybersecurity, they're not going to ever pay on it if you have not instituted some basic safeguards yourself. So again, this is such an easy thing to just put your blinders on and go, I'm not going to think about this. It's not a big deal to get it protected up front. I have a friend who has a business that was hacked and all their data literally, stolen or hijacked by a Russian or Ukrainian or someplace out there. And they actually had to restore from a backup and hope that the data didn't get used. This can happen to anyone, no matter how little or how big. So making sure you have some technologies and policies for this tech usage makes sense. I'm going to leave it at that. Has anyone had any experience with this IT support or outsourcing some of this? Mike?
I was gonna say, this is one case game brought up. We're having somebody local may be important. And for the cybersecurity and the policy and everything else, that may not be local, but I've had several instances last few years where like the power pack for my laptop fritzed out and it was gonna take 3 days to get one from Amazon. The guys who I had local relationship with just lent me one. I mean, I would have rented it for them. I would have bought one from them, but they just lent me one. And where my keyboard stopped working. And I had another thing where the software got screwed up, Windows wouldn't install updates. So having them local, even though they have remote access, being able to bring it to them was really important. Having that pre-existing relationship, as opposed to my friend Tony, who's always been my IT guy in the past, was really.
I actually ran the cybersecurity deep dive a month or so ago, and within a day after it, got an email from an Entrepreneurs Forever member who needed the contact information of the guy who presented it because she got hacked. And this can happen to anyone. There's 300 of us who are members of this organization, and you might think, oh, we're too little, no one's going to pay attention to us. Yeah, they might. So make yourself safe. It's something I would not cheap out about. Okay, insurance. I like having an independent insurance agent, not a captive, Farmers Insurance or State Farm or Nationwide. An independent insurance agent can actually people who specialize in commercial business insurance can look at all the different companies and see which one makes sense for you. This is one where James talked about having people who have experience in your industry. It's really helpful if your insurance agent, oh yeah, I have somebody who did that. Now, you might not think, Kirsten's she's selling stuff on Etsy and online, and like, how much insurance do you need? I don't know how much you need, but you need some. I don't know what the risks are of what you do. Bigger risk for James, right? Somebody sues him for malpractice. He's going to lose his house if he doesn't have insurance. He does not want that to happen. So find somebody who knows something about commercial business insurance and can shop among different agencies. You may be able to find somebody who's an online company. I know when I was starting out as a business coach, the International Coach Federation had a company that specialized in insurance for coaches. And it was pretty cheap. I want to say I paid $200 a year. I realized it wasn't enough after a while because I was doing activities that were beyond coaching, but make sure someone knows what you do and can cover you and also understands the risks. If you're doing something that is, in one case, we were hosting other people's websites. If somebody's website went down and they sued me because they were out of business for as long as the website was down, I needed protection against that. So understand the risks of what you're doing and make sure that you have protected yourself against it. If anyone on this call, I'm not even going to look up, doesn't have insurance for your business, please call an insurance agent. It's important and everyone should have it. And it probably doesn't need to be extensive if there's not a lot of risk in what you do, but we're going to leave it at that.
This is actually one of the issues in the big company contract where they'll say you need like $1 million of insurance.
I need to be your additional insured, they call it. Yeah. So making sure you have an insurance agent who understands that. Okay. I like having a banker. I think using one of those online banking services because it seems easy, or using Quicken Loans or whatever, don't do that. Go into a local bank or at least a local branch of a bigger bank and get them to know you. I will tell you, and James, I'm sure has stories about this. If you were already friendly with your local banker, you were far more likely to get a PPP loan. You could get a line of credit. If you get a surprise giant order and you need a line of credit to go buy more materials or rent a machine, having that banker who can say yes to you or at least listen to you right away makes sense. Even if you're a small, low budget, you're just doing your own thing as a consultant, or having this relationship is really, really valuable. When I ran the E4All site in Berkshire County, one of our entrepreneurs was using her personal vehicle for her business. And she wanted to do the right thing. She was really using that personal vehicle for business and change the loan from herself to her business. And I cannot tell you what a mess she got in at the local branch of the bank. Deborah picked the phone up and called the vice president of the bank, who was one of the supporters of our organization, and it was fixed in about a half an hour. But because she hadn't really created a relationship at that bank, they didn't know her and they were acting like she was trying to pull a fast one on them. You can build those relationships with your local banker. Make sure they know what your business is. You might be little to start with, but you might grow big, and it makes sense for them to support you. I'm a big fan of having a good local banker. And if you don't get what you're looking for from the first bank, go to the second, go to the third. One of them should appreciate you. Does anyone have a banking story they want to share?
I can share. I did
Hi,
expand,
Elaine. Thanks.
I did expand my business in April, and I used to work from home, and then I rented a big space for my studio. And I had worked with TD Bank, which is a national bank, for my business. But because my personal account and my husband's account was in a local bank, I did reach out to both of the banks to see if I could get a loan to start my business. I ended up going to the local bank because they knew me from 20 years, and my business bank didn't help me at all. And I was like, gosh, I've been working with my business for the last 7 years with this national bank. They didn't help me. So I was comparing, interest for the loan that I wanted to get it. And I did all the paperwork. So the local bank was easy, done. And my bank, my business bank, denied. And so I said, okay, withdraw my loan. And the next day, the guy from my town bank, the TD Bank, called me and said, oh, I just noticed you withdraw your loan. I'm like, yes, Middlesex Savings Bank helped me more, gave me less interest, and they are just doing things quickly. And he was like, oh, if I knew. And I'm like, yeah, I told the guy that I was expanding, but guess what? I'm going to close the bank account with you guys. And it felt so great
So
because
isn't that a great feeling? It's like, and now he's not going to be with you and take advantage of the growth that your business is going to have. It's his fault, all on him.
And I was like, the local bank was helpful. I went to the bank, and she was just helping me setting up all the papers, and they were very nice, because it was my personal account that we used. But I just felt like, if you know someone, it's much better than a national. And it was a mistake for me to do, like 7 years ago, to do a different bank because I want to separate my business and my personal.
Well, you could separate it, but you could have separated it by going to another small local bank. But that's
Yes.
okay. Live
Yes.
and learn.
But-
Kirsten,
Yeah, I use Huntington, and kind of like just a exciting congratulation moment for myself is that I got a line of credit. I don't need one, but I was working with this woman, and she like saw that was something that I was it felt, I'm generally kind of like skeptical, so I don't know, it felt kind of sales pitchy. I was like, what is this? But I never considered like waiting on a big order to like, oh, that I just like, it's sitting there if I need it. Like there's no harm. It's just
and if you don't
brilliant.
use it, there's nothing to it. And it's so reassuring to know that if a big order came in, you could, spend the money to get it. So,
Well, and to follow up, she did know I had a stroke last year. So that was like my biggest thing. I was out, I couldn't work all month or all year. And so that was kind of her, I was saying I overdrew because my accounts weren't like connected, and that was like a big red flag for her. So yeah, telling that personal story in the chair in front of her helped. And I'm like, what is this all about? But then I was like, oh my gosh, if this happens again, it's just really, it's an amazing banking story.
that's beautiful. And you shouldn't have another stroke. One was plenty.
Yeah,
Okay.
I sure hope so.
This isn't appropriate for everyone, but in some cases, a board of advisors is a great thing. It could be a formal board or an informal advisory board if some legal entities are required to have them. But you might want one if you're trying to decide to enter a new line of business, open a store, whatever. If you have some people who you can assemble to do it, it can be great. It's not for everyone. I'm actually going to go quickly over that one because I think virtual assistants are vastly underrated because as Amy pointed out, you can assign them one piece of the puzzle to handle for you. It can be project-based or retainer-based. They can handle lots of different kinds of work. And I've probably worked with, over the course of my career, 15 or 20 different virtual assistants. One helped run an event. One handled social media. I have one right now who's working with a client of mine who does pre-sales event management. So like if somebody wants to set up a sales call, they schedule it, they send the follow-up email. Lots of virtual assistants will understand a specific software program or something that you need to do a big mail merge. I know that people don't send mail anymore, but there can be amazing things. So Kirsten, you could literally find a virtual assistant who specializes in doing shopping cart abandonment follow-up emails. I know that sounds crazy, but I bet if you Google search for it, there's somebody who's really good at that. And if they then were willing to work for, I don't know, 15 or 20 an hour plus 15% of any new closed sales, boy, there's a win, right? So if you can think about what the task is that you're not doing and find a virtual assistant who can take that off of your plate, that can be huge. And this is US based and overseas. When I talk in a minute about how you find these people and how you put them to work, especially with a virtual assistant, I would find a project to start with and do a project and make sure you like working with them before you get in too deep, especially because people can say they do stuff, but until you actually see them do it, you're never sure if they can make that happen. Amy, how did you find all of your virtual assistants?
So my US based virtual assistant who helps me with a lot of like ops strategy and launch program support and kind of helps to oversee the other two. I found her through a connection of another entrepreneurial program that I was a part of who helped them. And then I followed up with her. So that was like a networking situation. And I appreciate that, you know, at least one of them is here in the US. And then I was a little bit reluctant to go overseas because I mean, I grew up in a family, it's like, you know, fight for the union label. It's like, you know, I'm very like US based and I was, but I also have a global perspective and I understand, you know, that it's very much mutually beneficial. So I went through, it's actually a social impact agency that does have a presence in the US, but they hire mostly in Venezuela and in other like developing countries. So it really gives people in their 20s and 30s, you know, a lot of them have a college degree, a lot of them, yeah, they just need to have access to the internet, which I know for some people in different places of the world, it can be a little bit spotty, but that's kind of like the main requirements. And they really work to hire these young professionals that otherwise, like they're very qualified, but they don't have a great national economy. So I felt a little bit better about outsourcing internationally to that. I can provide
Actually, if you send me the link, I will share it across in the follow-up email. That would be terrific.
So I can
sounds like a win-win. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy, his name is Enrique, and what he likes to do is have email, like, so I would email and connect whoever's interested. That's how he likes to do it. So so I want to connect with you guys anyways, but if I can help connect you to Enrique, who's been a pretty good source for me, but I would just encourage you, whether it's through, it's called iWorker, I should say. But the way they hire it, he likes it to be kind of like a personal connection or a recommendation or request. So that's one thing, but I would also just suggest whether it's through that agency or others. I know a lot of people go through Filipino. There's like a whole, you guys, the Philippines has like literally created a VA industry in the Philippines.
They have, and their English is excellent. And the thing I've been amazed, one of my clients who uses it, they're willing to work US business hours, even though it's completely on the world.
So what I would just say, regardless, and that's another, and I don't have it off the top of my head, Deborah, you might know that agency name, it's like everywhere. But regardless, I would definitely make sure you set up multiple virtual interviews and give a sample project at the beginning. Because you know, it's easier to let go of a VA than like an employee in Massachusetts, but at the same time, you don't want to be like on that VA treadmill because it can be super frustrating. I've heard some really bad stories with people not knowing who they're getting into, but I think that could have been prevented at the beginning. So anyways, like anything else, but hope that's helpful.
And Amy and I are going to be talking about using interns in your business. We'll be talking about that moving up forward. Okay.
All the mysteries.
All right. There are other experts, very specific people you can bring in to solve a problem. So there are people who help you with operations, social media, business coaches. That's what I am when I'm not doing this. Human resources consultant. You could hire somebody to help you hire, a hiring agency, a compliance or regulatory expert. This could be really important if you're in a regulated kind of industry. A lobbyist, maybe beyond most of us, but sometimes a sales coach and a consultant. If you are really struggling with sales, having someone help you at least set up a process and think about how to do it and then send you on your way, it's great. Strategy consultant, what do you next move for your business? You're thinking about expanding. You just want someone to bounce it off of. Somebody who's industry specific. I have an aunt who was in the beauty industry, and she knew experts who would help people open salons. They knew about what you needed to know about renting chairs, buying equipment. If that's something you need to know very specific, I can promise you there's someone who knows about it. And if you're facing a very specific issue on a reorg or a layoff or a problem customer or a problem vendor, there are people who can help you. So obviously everyone's business is different. This is becoming more common, and it might or might not be relevant for you, but you can hire a fractional chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, chief operating officer, or a chief technology officer. So if you're expanding and you're not really ready to hire someone full-time to do your marketing, you could have a quarter of the time of somebody who probably makes more money than you do. But if you could just have a quarter of their time, so they work for you on, Mondays and Friday mornings or something like that, or every day for 2 hours, or however you work it out. This has been a growing industry. One of our new facilitators is actually a fractional COO and handles the operations and process for multiple different organizations. And for him, it's fun because he gets to go put on his operation and process hat and work in lots of different companies. So it's a new approach, may or may not make sense for you, but I felt like I should bring that forward. Okay, this is the same slide brought back. Even when you outsource, you still need to drive and direct the work. So how do you find that dream team? I love the examples you guys have been sharing with us. Referrals, asking your peer group. When you find somebody you're interested in, Mike said this, vetting 3 candidates, everyone should give you a free first meeting. And I say, trust your gut. Ensure there's a strong connection and that you and your dream team get what you do and that your styles are compatible. There are just people who, when you meet them, it's not going to work out. And that's okay. Trust your gut. These are people who you're going to be paying to help you move your business forward. And if they're not supportive of you, they don't seem to get you, trust your gut. So Amy, it sounds like you've done a ton of this kind of interviewing. Do you have any specific things you look for when you do those interviews?
It's like the classic behavioral question, like if this, then that, like, how would you handle this? High stress situations, they're usually project based. So it's usually like they need to be able to, know how to respond in certain common circumstances, but also I would assess their willingness and ability to communicate with you no matter what the circumstance. So sometimes they go MIA, they're not our employees, so we cannot direct them to work for us at certain hours, but you still may have a certain task that you want done by a certain time. So you've got to figure out a creative way that, you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to do the best they can by the time they give. Like, you can't say you need to meet with me on this regular time. And that's been kind of tricky. And I just recently was like, I don't know if this is okay, but I literally just, for the first time, we're doing a weekly team meeting with me and my 3 VAs. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm like, should I be consulting somebody? Is that okay? Like, do they have to meet with me? But that seems to be
I think it's okay. I do the same with the people I outsource with.
Okay. So it seems, but it's all about like, how would they handle certain high stress situations to get the task done by when you need it? And then, like, no matter what, how do they communicate? And then the sample project, I would highly recommend. And some people say pay them for that. Some people say don't pay them for that. It depends on the logistics, if they're through an agency, they may not want you to do a sample project unpaid. So if you want to engage with them and then give them a 30-day or even a 90-day performance period, like, you just can try to set it up in a way that works for you, but it has to fall into how they work. So you've got to figure out how that agency works. Most of them are affiliated with agencies as opposed to their own independents, but you can find independent VAs as well.
So I'm unfortunately going faster than I wish. So making sure you check their background, their qualifications, reviews, and references. Get a contract, even for that starter project, understanding the scope of work and a trial period. Make sure there's a non-compete and confidentiality. You don't want them doing work for you and then giving it to someone else. And figure out what the length of the agreement is and how it ends. So I always say, check in at 3 months and then decide if you're moving forward, but be able to walk away without any implications. So make sure when you're getting this contract, now you can use the boilerplate or the provider's language. Mike made this point earlier, but know what you're signing before you sign it, and make sure if you are paying for the time of an outsourced resource to create work for you, that you own the work that they don't. You would hate to pay them to create a whole marketing campaign and then have them go sell it to someone else. So make sure that you own the property and the work that they do.
Yeah, guys, make sure they're sharing, reinforce that 100 times. If they create it inside of their own Google Doc and never share it, or even if they share it and they can still own it or delete it, no bueno.
Nope. And you have to own the ability to use it moving forward. So if you fire them, it's still your work. You can have these folks on retainers or use them as needed. Also, understand who's actually doing the work. If you're hiring a firm, like let's say James's accounting or his bookkeeping firm, is James doing the work, or are you going to find yourself with a junior, person? That should be stated in the contract. What's your role? And is this a one-time agreement or ongoing? These are details that are really important. I'll be sending all of this to you, so you'll be able to check it out. I love starting small. Try a test project or a specific program to work on together before you sign a long-term contract. Mike?
I was just going to say that backing up in terms of interviewing 3 people or 3 different firms, is have a list of questions that you want to ask them specific to the terms, and ask them, can you tell me other clients in my business that you can show me examples of? I mean, sometimes they can't tell you, but if it's like a web designer, they should be able to
They
point out.
should be able to show you. I'm also a big fan of what Amy was saying. It's like, let me tell you about a problem we might face. How would you handle this? And just listen to how they think on their feet, because sometimes you can't anticipate what it is you're going to be giving them, and hearing them talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll also tell you, we've recently hired somebody to work with us who, there's some things about her I don't love. It's so much easier to hire somebody who has things about them that you don't love when they're outsourced, because all you need them to do is deliver what you're doing. Kirsten, if you were hiring somebody to work with you in your shop and create the stuff, you would have to love them. But a virtual assistant to help you with your Etsy things, yeah, you don't have to love them, but will they get the work done? So remember that if they can do the work, that's what's really important. Mike, did you have something else?
Yeah, one other thing, if it's going to be somebody that's going to be local, make the effort, go to their place and see what it looks like, as opposed to just having them come to you or meet at a coffee shop or whatever, because you can tell a lot by somebody's office.
Well, if people are working from home, that might not be fair.
No, oh sure, if that case, but like when I interviewed 3 accountants, I purposely took the effort to go to their offices and see what it looked like, and got a whole gestalt. It's that gut information.
Olivia, did you want to say something?
Yeah, in terms of the starting small, also, I always teach people to think of their business in a season. So when you were asking about logo marketing, some of the things that doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh no, we walk away from this, we need this whole team, dream team, of just throwing that out there, that you sort of focus in on one thing and then the next thing becomes clearer of where you're going.
Yes, you don't have to understand it all at the beginning, and having somebody who's versatile enough to help you at those different stages makes sense. Before I stop the presentation, I want to make sure we have some really cool, interesting events coming up. Organizing Your Business for Success is going to be co-presented with Doogie, who's the guy who I just talked about, who's the fractional COO, who's going to be talking about how do you figure out what to hire for, how to organize your business for success. And actually we'll tie back into today, because like, if you can't hire somebody to do something if you haven't figured out what it is they need to do. So maybe I should have done them in the other order, but that one's valuable. Our In Good Company will have, among others, our own Kirsten, who's on today. I blew up my sales by going online, a panel discussion. We have 4 distinct Entrepreneurs Forever members who all sell stuff online, food, arts, all kinds of interesting stuff. I don't remember them all now. That's on Wednesday, the 13th. And it's not at 4 to 5:30, it's actually 11:30 in the morning. And then we're doing a Forever Forward next month about your personal credit and why it matters in your business. So I didn't leave too much time for Q&A here, but I want to, and it is after 9:30. I'm here. I'm going to actually stop the recording. If people want to stay and chat, I'm